We have just made it through what is probably the most unusual Halloween we've ever experienced, kind of like the year we are experiencing. And speaking of this year, we have taken on a whole new relationship with masks. We've all worn Halloween masks, which are traditionally where we think of masks, and we've worn masks for jobs that we've had, maybe for protection. Some people actually have nefarious reasons they wear masks, like think of bank robbers. But this year, masks have taken on a whole new significance, and our relationship with them has been an interesting experience. And this morning, in honor of the recent Halloween holiday where masks prevail, I'd like to stretch your thinking about masks even a little more. Let's look at masks from a spiritual perspective. Now, here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those invisible masks, masks that other people can't see, but the masks that cover up our true nature, masks that separate us or create an illusion of separation from the truth of who we really are. Now, these masks can be serious, and they can keep us from truly experiencing the abundant life, the joyful life, the spiritual enrichment that we deserve. In Matthew 5:14, Jesus as the Christ actually gave us some advice on this. He was using a metaphor of the light and a bushel basket. And he said, "You are the light of the world." And he tells us, don't hide that light under a bushel basket. Let your light shine. Well, these masks we wear sometimes are just like those bushel baskets. They cover up the true nature of who we are. They get in the way of our shining. And what happens is we get tied into that world of illusion, that world of outer appearance, that world of mass confusion. So this morning, I'd like to encourage us to move from mass confusion to mask-unfusion. Let's get rid of these masks that are getting in the way of our spiritual ability to let our lights shine. Let's get rid of the masks that are dimming the truth of who we really are. So that leads us to the big questions, two of them really. How do I get rid of these masks? And why is it even important? Well, let's start with why first. And I believe we can find the why in a 1994 movie, an interesting movie called The Mask. I don't know if you had a chance to see it or not. If you haven't, I'd encourage you to take a peek at it. It's a fun movie to watch, but there's a really deep message there. Jim Carrey is the star, and he plays the role of Stanley Ipkiss. Stanley Ipkiss is a mild-mannered bank clerk who is just too nice for his own good, and he is constantly taken advantage of. Well, on what was probably the worst day of his life, Stanley finds himself walking along the shore, and he looks down, and he finds this mask, this green, ancient wooden mask that, unbeknownst to Stanley, was inhabited by Loki, the Norse night god of mischief. Well, Stanley's looking at this mask and he can't think of anything better to do, so he just puts it on. And in that moment, the mask fuses to Stanley, transforms him into this wacky, uncontrollable, green-suited, cartoony, maniacal character, a superhero who goes out into the world in search of mischief and justice. Well, what happens is that mask takes over Stanley's life and pure havoc ensues. You'll have to watch the movie to see what happens next. But the message and the reason I'm sharing it is the same thing can happen to us. When we allow these masks we wear, these masks that dim our light, these masks like the mask of fear or unforgiveness, envy, jealousy, worry, all those things that are not part of the truth of who we are. If we allow ourselves to wear these masks for too long, they can literally take over our life. They can stick to us like glue. Let me give you a couple pictures, mental pictures, so you can see what I'm talking about. Think about a child who is playing with paste for the very first time. Have you seen it? They get the paste stuck on their fingers and then they want to shake it and get it off their fingers and they can't seem to get it off. And then everything they touch begins to stick to their fingers, like the papers and all the glitter, and it can be a mess. And they're having fun, but it can be a little frustrating. Or let me think of another example. I can remember when I needed to repair a nail, one of my broken fingernails. Somebody had told me, because I didn't have any nail glue, and they had told me I could use super glue. And I thought, that sounds interesting. Well, let's give it a try. Well, let's just say that I was not the neatest person in the world, nor did I realize the power of super glue or fully appreciate how quickly it could bond. Before I knew it, I had glue all over my hands. My fingers were sticking together, and I literally thought they'd be that way for life. I kind of panicked, and I started pulling them apart, and I finally got them separated. And I was literally pulling off little pieces of white stuff from my fingers for days. And I am firmly convinced it literally transformed the nature of my fingerprints. Well, there's two vivid examples. If you can get those pictures in your head, that's what happens when these masks become part of us. They stick to us like glue. Let me give you a more practical example, because I'll tell you, when we let these masks take over our lives, the results can sometimes be devastating. One of the things that Bill and I do in our work is team building. And we have an activity we use sometimes called desert survival. Well, we wanted to take that activity a little deeper and give it more value and depth. So we did a little research on how people survive in the desert to add to our discussion when we talked about it. Something very interesting came out. We found that people had been located in the desert. They had died of dehydration because they'd gotten lost there. But what was interesting is, with those people who had died of dehydration were full canteens of water. Now think about that. They had full canteens of water, and yet they died of dehydration. What the scientists deducted from this was that the individuals became panicked, fearful when they were lost, and out of fear that they would die of dehydration, they wouldn't drink their water. They wanted to save it. But as they saved their water, the dehydration began to set in and created a situation where they could no longer make wise choices. It affected their ability to choose wisely. They didn't understand what was happening. And as a result, they died from the very thing they most feared, with water readily available. I think the point is so obvious that when we allow these masks to take us over, the results can be devastating. Devastating for our spiritual growth, our enrichment, our ability to let our light shine. So now we know why this is important. The next step is, okay, I know it's important. How do I do it? How do I get rid of these masks? And I have an answer for you. 2 steps. The first step, we have to acknowledge there really is a mask there. We have to be aware of it, because if you're not aware of it, you just can't fix it. How do you know? Listen to your body, because you will feel very uncomfortable. And I'm not talking about the discomfort like we get from outer masks, like the ears, it's too tight around our ears, or we can't breathe and our glasses fog up. I'm talking about what we feel inside. I'm talking about that feeling of discomfort, the anger, the frustration, fear, tiredness, anything that is out of alignment with the truth of who you are. Anything that doesn't feel like you're living from your fullest, truest self. That is a signal that you are wearing one of these masks. So once you know you're wearing it, how do you get rid of it? What do you do next? And that's where the mask acronym comes in. So easy, because if you know you're wearing a mask, you'll be thinking about the word mask, M-A-S-K. The acronym is your solution. Meditate and simply know. Meditate and simply know. Now, I realize that sounds way too simple, way too easy, but trust me on this. The ability to meditate and simply listen to that inner wisdom, that intuitive wisdom that gives you what you need to know to move beyond your mask. Your ability to do this is truly the answer to eliminating all the mask confusion that you're experiencing in your life. Take a moment right now. Just take a breath. And as you exhale, just say those words. Meditate and simply know. Meditate and simply know. Just saying the words brings a resonance, a feeling of peace and calm. And then you can actually do it. Go into the silence, go into what we at Unity love to call headquarters. The Fillmores love to call this our spiritual headquarters. We go into that silence, that place of knowing. And that's where we simply know what to do. Let me give you 3 specific examples. I want to do my little un-Google search of the top 3 masks we wear to hide our spirituality. I don't think there's really a Google search that will do that, but my own personal research has identified 3 that I think are the tops. I've experienced them, and I'll bet every one of you listening has experienced this as well. So let's take a peek at them and see how we can use the mask formula to deal with them. The first one is the mask of martyrdom, sometimes called the victim mask. This is the mask we wear when we take on the world and then we want to gripe and complain about it. You'll recognize this mask by your self-talk. Our self-talk gives away a lot. Your self-talk with the martyr mask goes like this. Why me? Why am I always the one who has to do this? Why do I get stuck with this particular thing? How come I'm the one that always has to say, I'm sorry? Why am I the one that always is the listener? When is somebody going to listen to me? Any of that sound familiar? When you're hearing those kind of self-talk images, it's time to apply the mask formula. Meditate and simply know. Know that you're not a victim. Know that you have the power of choice. I recently gave a keynote address to a group of wonderful professional women, and it was called Living at the Speed of Life. And one of the techniques I was sharing was about self-care and how important it was to make time to rejuvenate, make time for yourself, guilt-free. Well, of course, they were throwing all kinds of excuses at me, but we worked through the process of how you can let go of the mask of martyr and move into self-care and self-preservation. Well, after the program, one of the women came up to me and she shared a really interesting story. She said that as her mother was dying in the hospital, one of the last things she said to her was, and I quote her mother, "I wish I hadn't worried so much about having a clean house. I gave up so much to make sure that house was clean, and who really cared?" And the woman talking to me said in that moment, she got it. In that moment, she realized she had taken over that mask from her mother, that martyr mask of, I have to be the one to keep everything clean. And she realized that she was doing it at the expense of her own self-care and her family's sanity. And she said, this just reminded me of it, and I'm giving that mask up for good. And I celebrated with her. And I want you to celebrate with yourself as you recognize that particular mask and let it go. Sometimes masks can be very sneaky. They can wear other masks so we don't recognize them. So the martyr mask can sometimes wear the mask of service. I'm being of service to others. It can wear the mask of, I'm being a good team player. It can wear the mask of cooperation. Now, all of those things are good. There's nothing wrong with that, unless they are simply masks covering the mask of being a martyr, being a victim, blaming others for where I am. And when you recognize that martyr mask, meditate and simply know. Meditate and simply know that you have the power of choice. You can choose what you do. You can choose to do things for self-care. You can choose to use situations for good. You have that power. Meditate and simply know. The second mask I want to talk about, and these are in no particular order, by the way, but the second mask is the mask of fear. This is a big one, and it has lots of different appearances. It can show up as fear of looking silly, fear of making a mistake, fear of failure, fear of meeting a deadline, fear of being what somebody else expects me to be, fear of success. There are incredible ways fear shows up in our life. And so when we're doing fear, we want to look at what it's doing to us. How are we sabotaging ourselves? How are we keeping ourselves from being the very best we can be? I could do a whole program just on how you deal with fear, but let's go to the MASK acronym. When you feel that fear coming on within you, meditate and simply know. Know that your consciousness is greater than any fear you may encounter. Your consciousness is greater than any fear you may encounter. When you know that, you can remove that mask of fear forever. So we have had Mask-Unfusion of the martyr victim mask and the fear mask. The third one I want to use as an example is the fear, not the fear, but the mask of unworthiness. The mask of unworthiness. This is the mask that says, I'm not good enough. This is the mask we wear when we say, you know what? I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm not smart enough. I'm only, or I'm just a. When you hear I'm just a member here. I'm not on the board. So what difference can I make? You know, those are the clues that tell you you might be wearing that mask of unworthiness, that mask that says, I don't deserve this. Sometimes it can wear another mask. It's another one of those insidious ones. It can wear a mask of humility, or it could wear the mask of putting others first. But hey, look at yourself and recognize who you really are. When you feel that mask of unworthiness start to form, when you start hearing those words come from within, that's the time to use the mask formula. Meditate and simply know. Know that you are God nature actualizing at the point of you. You are divine and you are worthy. You deserve to have the best. Well, there you have 3 examples, and I'm sure you can think of many more as you start to become aware of the masks that you might be wearing. And masks are great fun for Halloween, right? We love to wear them and we have a lot of fun. Masks are critically important for our own safety and protection. But the truth is, our spiritual beings need no masks. Instead, we want to let our lights shine so that we can be that great light in the world and that we can grow from within that incredible spiritual enrichment that allows us to better understand and use our spiritual laws and principles, to have the spiritual practices working in our lives so that we truly get to experience the abundant, rich, inner, peaceful, happy life that we so richly deserve. Whenever you feel those debilitating masks starting to form on you, like paste, like glue, whenever you feel out of sync with the truth of who you really are, whenever you feel like you might be experiencing an illusion of separation, In that moment, stop. Take a nice deep breath. Affirm that you are going to move from Mask-Confusion to Mask-Unfusion. And you're going to apply that MASK acronym. Meditate. Go to headquarters. Go to that place of silence, that still point. Meditate and simply know. Know that you are in charge of you and you have the power of choice. Know that your consciousness is greater than any fear you may encounter. Know that you are God nature actualizing at the point of you. You are worthy. You are divine. You deserve to have this life of abundance and joy. Meditate and simply know that you truly can master the art of living as you walk the spiritual path on prosperous, positive, practical feet. Blessings and namaste.